Okay, we are recording. And here we are. All right. So thank you for those who are able to join us today. Wendy, thank you for being with us. And for those of you who will catch us on the replay, thank you for taking out your time. Today, we are talking about generational wealth building strategies. Our speakers for today will include we have Valerie Rodriguez on the venue, but she is traveling today, so she's not going to be able to be with us. But next we have David Germain, who is a licensed New York City real estate broker and instructor, investor, and strategic wealth strategist. He has a company of his own. It's called Proven Winners Realty Inc. And he also is an associate broker with Fave Realty. Then we have myself, Denise Williams. I have a health and wellness company as well. My forte, my background is I'm a licensed social worker and I'm a health and wellness professional and wealth creation builder. I'm also a licensed insurance broker. David Germain is also a licensed insurance broker as well. So today we're going to share our knowledge and our experiences with generational wealth building strategies. David, I think you're next.
Awesome. So I want to go back to that slide that you were at, Denise, and thank you for that warm introduction. So when we think about generational wealth, we know that real estate is one of the building blocks of the generational wealth, right? So when we look at this family, this is your typical average family right here, right? Now, what I want you to impart on this journey here is looking at this family. What would happen if, when we're looking at this picture of this happy family, if something happened to either the mom or the dad or the children? And what do you have in place in the event that something happens to one of you? So let's go to my family now. Next slide. So this is my family. This is back in 2009 when my sister graduated from the Ivy League school. This is where she got her doctorate's degree. And this was a great time in my life. You can see I look younger there. That was my mom in the middle. And there goes my brother, right? So this was a very happy time. Now, the thing about life, life can happen to anyone. Next slide. So now life happened. So the thing about it, tomorrow, as we know, isn't promised to anybody. And anybody here can get sick, right? And what happens if you get sick where you have either cancer, diabetes, a heart attack, a stroke? Well, ladies and gentlemen, this all happened to me and my family. I show you my grandmother where I'm holding her, and she had diabetes and she also passed away from a stroke, right? Then on the right side, you have my father, who was a Vietnam War veteran. He fought in the war, and now he also came back with post-traumatic stress disorder, and also he had a stroke, and that's him next to his mother. Then you have my mother, who right there, which is very hard for me to see because this is a woman that I saw break down literally right in front of me. And this was the last time that my mother recognized who I was. And she literally just withered down to bones. And here go my father, basically getting a triple heart bypass surgery um, in 2016, where now he is pretty much, thank God he survived it, but I'm just letting you know that sickness can happen to anyone. We're not immune from it. Next slide. So this is my mom. Unfortunately, she didn't make it with the battle from cancer. She did pass away in 2011. Now, the information that I'm sharing with you here is very important because if I would have known the information that I'm sharing with you now, our lives would have been different. Because when you saw my mother literally have to go from a healthy person, and she was the breadwinner in our family. And when she was sick, the breadwinner was gone, right? So now all of a sudden, I'm the oldest of three. I had to step up. Now, the thing about it, when my mother got sick with cancer, with breast cancer in 2010, we had 5 properties at that time. And the struggle to keep all those mortgages paid, it paid a price not only on me, mentally and physically and financially, because I didn't want the sacrifice of her hard work going down the drain. So thank God, though, my mother, she did have several life insurance policies that helped change the last name in our family, but we didn't get a chance to benefit from those life insurance policies. She had $1 million in coverage. We didn't get a chance to benefit from it until she passed away a year and 6 months later. During that year and 6 months, we had to struggle financially to try to keep those properties from going into foreclosure. Next slide. So my mentor, Jim Rome, said, formal education will make you a living, while self-education will make you a fortune. The difference between millionaires and broke people is one thing: information. So we're going to show you the type of information and education that you don't get in a school. Next slide. So,
So here,
go ahead, Denise.
so here, I also want to highlight that not because you get the education or the knowledge or the information does it always make sense. Sometimes, and my company is built on helping people who have experienced trauma. Trauma can be anything in life that pretty much stops you where you're at and alters where you're going. So if you've been involved in a car accident, you've lost a loved one, you've lost a job, you've had a tumultuous time in a relationship, you've lost, unfortunately, a child, or just had anything that pretty much put you in a place where you were no longer able to function in the same way, that you had to figure out a different way to pivot. That is trauma. And trauma has different effects on different people in different ways. Trauma can affect, your ability to work, your ability to take care of yourself, your ability to interact with others. It can affect your relationships, not just with people, but your relationships with time, your relationships with money, your relationships with yourself. So I also want to deliver to you, we're going to give you a great concept of financial concepts and how to build generational wealth. But it means nothing if you don't understand how you've been affected by your own life experiences. So here I have on the screen a couple of things just for you to think about as Aristotle ponders about his money, his Benjamins that wasn't around when he was around. But if you can just imagine, if we are all Aristotle, if we were all the uh, amazing creators in our own life and journey, why don't we pay ourselves? Why do we continue the same money habits? Why do we overspend more than what we have, more than what we earn? Why are we unable to save money? Why do I avoid managing my finances and getting a better hold on it? Do I have an emergency fund? These are all things to think about. And if you think about how trauma affects us, trauma, like I said, it doesn't just affect your relationships with people or your ability to do things, but it can also affect your relationship with time and money. So if you're too depressed to think about it, if the memories of what you had or your life that you had are too overwhelming and you can't reset your mind to what needs to happen moving forward, the plan that needs to happen or the plan that needs to be set in motion, how are you going to make better money decisions? Is it because your self-worth has been broken, or altered? Are you settling for less? Are you settling for what's comfortable or easy? Are you allowing your anxiety about money management and what that looks like and getting out of a mess really rule you into a place where now you're stuck? Do you believe in a better solution for yourself? So these are all things that we want you to think about. And as you absorb the information today, if some of these things are underneath that may be affecting your decisions and your mindset about money, that's something that we need to look at. So when we think of a family, we see the pictures of the happy family. They're smiling, they're living life, they're doing, the best that they can do right for the children. The two parents are the income earners. And if you think about it, a typical family earns probably about 50 to 60,000 each a piece, right? So let's say Sandra earns about, after taxes, she brings home 2,500 a month. James brings home about the same. Together, they put their two apples together and they have an income for the household of $5,000. Let's just say these are hypothetical numbers. This may not be every family, but let's just say a typical middle class family has expenses monthly of about $4,500, right? So let's say they have a house, they have a mortgage. Maybe the mortgage is about $1,500. The utilities to keep that house running and in good order, heat, hot water, or cooling, keep the lights on, basically keep everything in motion so that the pipes don't freeze, the house is not freezing cold and you're not comfortable, or you're in the middle of the hot summer and you can't even go in your house because it's just too hot. So let's say utilities are about 500, food, you're gonna, oh my goodness. There we go. Sorry. Okay, so now let me go back to my screen here. I should put my phone on do not disturb. All right. So coming back here to the expenses, let's say this family of four does about $400 in food. That's groceries. So they're cooking and they're stretching the dollar a little bit by getting groceries, eating healthier, hopefully taking care of their health. Let's say tuition and childcare. They typically spend about $1,500 for both kids. Clothing, they spend about $250 a week, or maybe sometimes they don't always. My gosh, somebody is persistent. Okay, sorry about that. All right, let me take 1 second here and just put my phone on do not disturb. Okay, so sorry about that. So let's say they spend about $250 on clothing. Maybe they don't spend that every week, but maybe they have dry cleaning bills or things like that. The money can be allocated in different ways, but just hypothetically. Activities for the family, let's say they go out, maybe they do a family activity or sports activity, maybe $250 a month, and savings, they save about $100 a month. Did we lose someone? David, can you see the participants?
It's just me. Let's go. Keep going.
Okay, all right. So
Yeah,
now,
I'm wrong.
now let's just say now Sandra and James are doing a great job taking care of their family at 5,000 overhead a month. But God forbid something happened to one of the income earners. Let's say James got into a bad car accident. He's disabled. He can no longer work. What happens to his income? It disappears like poof the dragon. And so Sandra now has to worry about taking care of her husband and taking care of her two children on her very own solid single income of $2,500. Not only is she devastated because now her handsome, vivacious husband is no longer able to work, and that changes the dynamic. She's sad, she's depressed, or whatever, but and that is a trauma. But now she has to figure out, how is she going to maintain the family and what they have? How is she going to take care of everything? Let's just say Sandra and James, they did not have any income protection in place. They did not have any living benefits in place. So now James's income is gone. And now all they have is Sandra's income to pay all of the same overhead that was there before. So how far, guys, do you think that the family's going to get if her income is 2,500 and the expenses are still the same? The mortgage is still 1,500. If she's only bringing in 2,500, she can only afford the mortgage, utilities, and some food, not even, going as far as tuition and childcare and clothing. How are they going to get by? And not everyone's expense list looks like this. Some people's expense list may include a car payment, car insurance. Some people might have, other expenses, debt, credit card debt. Typically, the average American family has a credit card overhead debt of about 10,000 or more per household. And so if we think about all of these things, money is just going out. If you think of a bucket, it's just going through the holes in the bucket, and there's nothing that you can do to catch it until you do something different. All right, David, take it away.
So Bill Gates said, if you are born poor, it's not your fault. But if you die poor, it's your mistake, right? It is your fault. Next. So, what are the mentalities between the poor versus the rich? And the poor stands for passing over opportunities regularly. So, poor, they focus on success being unimportant. They blame others. They spend money versus investing money. They refuse to study, attention on the past. They become income driven, think small, fears change, criticizes, waste time, cause problems, single flow of income, and are work driven. While the rich are success is an obligation, responsibility. They invest money, they read and study, they pay attention on the future. They're net worth driven. They think big. They embrace change. They complement each other. They buy time. They solve problems. Have multiple flows of income and is goal driven. Next slide. So the 7 income streams. We only taught about one. We only know about one, which is earned income from working a job. But there are other income streams that the wealthy know about that we don't typically invest in. There's profit income from buying and selling. There's interest income from lending money. There's dividend income from owning stocks, which a lot of us don't invest in. Rental income from renting out a property, where most people do buy multifamily properties. Capital gains when assets increase in value. Also royalties, income from others using your work, like art or music. Next slide. So Robert Kiyosaki said, there are 4 wealth quadrants. Unfortunately, a lot of us fall into one of these wealth quadrants. The wealth quadrant that will give you financial freedom is the I quadrant, investor. They are people that have money working hard for them. Ladies and gentlemen, your money will always work harder for you than you can ever work for your money. But unfortunately, we're taught, just like on the last slide, to only have one way of making money, which is earned income. Next slide. So there are 4 ways to produce income. So 5% of wealth comes from having a job. Ladies and gentlemen, 5% of the population, wealth comes from having a job. 95% of wealth comes from being a business owner, which means that you own a system. And a system stands for, acronym, saving yourself time, energy, and money. Create a system. Then you have 95% of the population that are self-employed, where they own a job, but they don't have any time, right? Then there's the 5% of the population who are investors, where they own investments. And guys, we need to know the difference between an asset and a liability. Next slide. So Albert Einstein said, compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. A lot of us do understand compound interest, but we're usually on the wrong side of compound interest. Where if you have a credit card, you're getting interest compounded where you're paying for it, right? If you get a car loan, same thing. You have compound interest working against you. How do we get interest on our side where we earn compound interest? That's what we're going to show you next. Next slide. So compound interest, there's a rule. It's called the rule of 72. The example, the example shows how much if you earn over time with an investment of $10,000 at different rates of return starting at the age of 29. You should be investing earlier, but I'll go there later. So if you had a vehicle where you only had 1% interest, now, which vehicle do you know gives you about 1% interest? And most of you are going to say a bank, right? Because most of us put our money in a bank, right? But now, if we put our money in a bank where we only get 1%, and ladies and gentlemen, just to give you a little hint, most banks are not even giving you 1% interest today. But I'm being generous. It will take you 72 years for your $10,000 to double. How many people like that deal? Now, if you found a vehicle where you can get 4% interest, it will take that $10,000 18 years for your money to double. Now, what about if you found a vehicle that earns 6% interest? It would take that $10,000 12 years. And ladies and gentlemen, if you was able to find a vehicle where it earns 10% interest, it will now go up to, it will take you 7.2 years. Okay, next slide. So we're going to break down what happens if you started investing money earlier. I hope you guys can see the slide. If it's a little slow, low, let me know. We hopefully can blow it up. If you started investing at the age of 15,
Sorry.
if you started investing at the age of 15 and you had a vehicle that gave you an annual 10% interest return rate, and you just started 1 year, put in $3,000. In your first year, you will earn $300 off of that $300. Then if you invested another 3,000, just a little bit every year, then that 3,000 would then turn to 6,900. And then if you notice, the numbers start to go up, 10,000, and that's just on a $15,000 investment. If you kept it in that vehicle for at least the next 45 years, by the time you are 65 years old, on a $15,000 initial investment, you would have $1.6 million on a $15,000 investment if you started at the age of 15. What happens if you started at 19 years old? Because the time value of money is to invest now rather than later, right? When you're younger, you have more time and more, you have your working years. So if you invested now, because if you started later, just 4 years later, you started at 19 years old, you put in $3,000 a year and then an investment vehicle that gets you 10% annual interest. Now, guess what? Even though you put in more money, you invested, your total investment was 24,000. Even at the end of, let me see, from 27 to 65, that's about 40 years, you only have 1.5 million. So even though you invested more, you have less money compounded because it's about when you started to invest. And this is key. This is why we're doing this. So you can start investing now so your money will compound even more later. Okay. Now, what happens if you started investing at the age of 27? If you invest at 27 years old and you put in at least $117,000, that means you put $3,000 every year, even though you started later and you put in more money than the person who started at age 15 and only put in $15,000, look at the compound interest at 65. You only make 1.3 million. So this is time value of money. This is why you want to invest sooner rather than later. Next slide. So how does your money grow? There are many ways to invest your money. So here are three options. Fixed income. Typically banks work on a fixed income. You give them money, they'll give you a fixed rate of return, right? You see how it's flat every year. Then if you decide that you want to invest in stocks, bonds, or other things like that, cryptocurrency, then that is considered a variable. Variable, if you notice, you can start at one moment, it goes up, it can go up 20, 30%, even as high as 50%. But then also you got to allocate for market crashes because it can also go down. Just like it could go back up again, it could go back down. It's very volatile. So imagine if you have a 401k, which most people do, right? With your 401k, this happened to my mother. She had about $100,000 in her 401k account. This is 2007. She was going to retire in 2 years. But guess what happened in 2008? The market crashed. Guess how much money my mother lost when the market crashed when she was 2 years away from retirement? She lost $70,000. She was down to only 30,000 with 2 years to go. Imagine you put in 20 years and now your retirement fund lost 70% because that's what happened in 2008. Now, how can we invest where we can still participate in the stock market, but not risk our money? Because Warren Buffett said, you never want to lose your principal. Rule number 2, never lose your principal. And guys, can you guess what rule number 3 is? Never lose your principal, which is your starting investment. So if you invest in, let's say, an IUL, an index universal life policy, you can now participate in the stock market where now when the S&P 500, which historically speaking has grown over the last 75 years, an average of 12%. An average of 12%, guys. The S&P 500, which is the Standard and Poor's, which are the 500, the Fortune 500 companies. You will now have a vehicle where now you invest in that vehicle when the market goes up, like it's been going up for the last 4 or 5 years, you can now get the 10 or 12% interest, but it's capped. But then when the market decides that they want to go down and lose 25%, lose 50%, guess what? If you notice on this chart, you don't lose. Who likes that? Okay, let's go to the next slide. So how does your money get taxed? Because a lot of us don't know that the tax code are meant for investors and business owners. So if you have your money right now in a savings, a certificate of deposit, which is a CD account, you're taking your after-tax dollars, because everybody says I make $50,000. Then Uncle Sam's going to take that money, take 35%, especially if you don't have a vehicle, a business to write off things. And guess what? You're taking your after-tax dollars to invest into a savings or a certificate deposit, which is the first slide when we went back where you have a fixed income of 1%. Then you have a 401k, which is now taxed later. So imagine this, guys. You start off with a $15,000 investment, like we were talking about. You started with your nest egg. It started compounding interest, 8%, 10%, right? And then when you now need the money, ladies and gentlemen, well, let's say that 15,000 turns into 1.6 million, right? 40, 20 years later. Now, when you want to withdraw that money, guess what Uncle Sam's going to say to you guys? Oh, let's take 35% off of the $1.6 million. So that means if you have a $1 million retirement account, you're going to now get taxed at 30 to 35%, which means they're going to take anywhere between $300 to $350,000 off of your retirement account. How do you feel getting taxed on the nest egg, on the big nest egg that you grew over the years? I don't think anybody likes that deal, right? But now, then you have a tax advantage where you have things like a Roth IRA, cash accumulation and insurance policy. That's where you can take your tax dollars, defer those tax dollars off of the gross income, then you put it into a tax vehicle like an IUL, which is an index universal life policy, or an annuity. And now when it's time to withdraw that money, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? That $1 million nest egg that you built over the years won't be taxed. Who likes that product better? I think I'd rather not get taxed on my $1 million than getting taxed later. All right, next slide. So what are the benefits of a Roth versus a max funded IUL? One, you have the tax-free accumulation. So the money that you earn in pre-tax dollars, meaning your gross income, not your net, can now go into your Roth or a max funded IUL. So they both have those similarities. The next thing is tax-free access. If you want to have access to your account, the only thing is with a Roth, you only have access at the age of 59 and a half years old. What happens if you want to get your money now? Because some of you don't want to wait till 59 and a half to be able to withdraw money. Well, guess what a max funded IUL does? It allows you to withdraw money before the 59 and a half tax free. Also, with a Roth, the government only allows you to put up to $6,000 max. I think they just increased it. Maybe you can put, Amy, I think maybe 8 or 9 if I think they just turned the tax code. But with a max funded IUL, guys, you can put in as much, you can dump in as much as you want into a max funded IUL. Also, if you wanted access to your money anytime, as I said, you can get access to your money. You don't have to wait till 59 and a half. Then on top of that, you have the indexing strategy with the S&P 500, where you also participating in the gains of the stock market without participating in the losses. So that means you're always protecting your principal. And the best part about this, you have, if you pass away, your IUL acts as a life insurance, as a death benefit. If you pass away and you have your money in an IRA or you have it in a 401k, guess what? Your loved ones, unless don't have, if you don't set it up properly, you don't have a beneficiary. With this, you will have a beneficiary. So these are all of the gains. I see, if you can see, there's more checks and more productivity with a max funded IUL than a Roth. Okay, next slide. So where are you parking your money? Right? So most people park their money where? In a bank, right? So you have the taxes, you have the market, you have inflation right now. They're talking about inflation going from 2 to 3%. We see gas prices rising. Cost of food is rising. Everything is rising. Then what about emergencies? Do you know that most Americans don't even have enough money for a $400 emergency? What do you have to have in case there's an emergency right now? God forbid, right? What about disability if you get hurt? Just like I showed you earlier in the slides with my mom, where she got cancer, and my father, where he had a triple heart bypass surgery and also stroke. If you get hurt and you're the breadwinner in your family, What do you have in place that if you cannot work and you get sick, how is your family going to survive without your income? Because look what COVID did. A lot of people got COVID and they were sick and they couldn't work. Guys, this is a wake up call. What about lawsuits? See, a lot of people, and I'm a real estate broker. You know, we live in a country right now where it's Sue City. You know, people will sue you for anything. Guess what? I can sue you for your property and I can probably get it. I can sue you for your car and I can probably get it. But guess what? Even if you sue me, if I have a IUL, Index Universal Life Policy, guess what? If you sue me, you may get my properties, you may get my car, you may even get my assets, but you cannot sue me for my life insurance. That is protected. So that means your family will always have access to the life insurance, even if you got sued in a major lawsuit. That's powerful, guys. Same thing with fraud. What happens if you outlive your money? You can use life insurance as a vehicle for retirement, tax free, in the event that you outlive your money. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We're living longer. We're living longer till about 85, 90 to 100 years old. So, what vehicles do you have in place in case you outlive your money? Because I can't work the same way I'm working now when I'm 65, 70. The body's going to break down. You're not going to be able to work the same amount that you're working now while you're 22, while you're 30, while you're 40. And also death. You want to make sure that you have something in place. God forbid, if you pass away. I know I have $1 million policy on my head that if anything happens to me, that I know that my family will be taken care of right then and there. Okay? That's peace of mind. Okay? Next slide. So how do the wealthy avoid risks? So the thing is, you want to safeguard your money. And if I would have known the information that I'm sharing with you now, the amount of money that I made when I was in real estate, I would have parked my money in these vehicles right here because I wouldn't have lost any money. And I'm sure a lot of us went into investments that we lost money, right? This is a safe way you can grow your money and compound. Also, it provides stability, also predictability. I like knowing that my money's constantly growing. I don't like seeing my money right now. I have some assets in a stock market right now. I just lost 25% of the money of the gains that I had, right? I like to know that my money's constantly growing. And here's the thing about stability. If you notice in 2008 when the stock market crashed and the housing market bubble came, you saw mortgage companies go out of business. You saw banks go out of business. 162 Lehman Brothers, all these big time companies went out of business. But what you never saw, and I would love somebody to do their research, you never saw a life insurance company go out of business. That's to show you how protected your wealth is. Okay, so a tale of two families: the Rockefellers versus the Vanderbilts. And the rich, they protect their money, they insure it. If you take a look at the Forbes 400 list of the wealthiest families in the country today, you'll notice that the Rockefellers are still on the list and the Vanderbilts are not. Why? The Rockefellers had a method to perpetrate and preserve wealth rather than just handing it down to each generation to start all over again. And that's what a lot of us do. We have we always have to start over. No, the next generation is supposed to be better than the next generation. A wise man or woman is an inheritance for their kids or their family. Next slide, please. So, what are the advantages of becoming your own bank? Think about how a life insurance policy, an IUL, that builds cash value. If you need an emergency, instead of going to a bank where you have to have a 700 credit score, or if you need a credit card where you need at least a 680 to 700 credit score in case you need an emergency, guess what? By you having a max funded IUL, which builds cash value, you don't need a credit check, guys. If you need to take out 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, $100,000 from your policy, guys, where you can now for that emergency. You can do whatever you want. And guess what? You can take that money and leverage it and put it into real estate, buy properties with it. Also, you can borrow with no questions asked with available cash value. There's no application process, unlike bank loans where they do credit checks, background checks. You just called up the insurance carrier and guess what? Hey, I need 25,000, 50,000. And guess what? If you don't pay it back, it just decreases the death benefit. No big deal, right? Simply fill out the form and receive a payment. Also, you have health issue flexibility. There's no legality with the IRS because it's tax-free income, right? Who likes that? There's no tax on capital gains because guess what? When I put my money in the stock market and the moment I withdraw my money from the stock market, guess what? I'm paying capital gains tax. The moment I buy real estate and I sell it, guess what? There's capital gains tax. Not here, not with life insurance, right? Also, you have guaranteed compound interest plus dividends. If you don't know what dividends is, that means that the insurance company every month will be paying dividends into your account, okay? Then also you can borrow up to 95%, self-funding, flexible premium. So let's say right now you're having a hard year, because we know this year or last year, should I say, was a hard year for many people. If you can have a, so let's say you're paying $100 a month. If you're having a bad year, you can go and pay $50 a month. You have flexible premiums, which is powerful. And then also there's no timetable for loan repayment, even if you don't feel like you want to repay. Okay, next slide.
I think that's it.
So pretty much this is the part where we're going to talk about Q&A. If you have any questions, if you want to know or schedule anything with me, I can share some of these wealth strategies where this can also protect you and your family. I'm doing it. Anything here I'm talking about, I don't talk about anything that I'm not doing for myself. Okay. I just want to make sure that I lived through this. I seen what it was like when my mother passed, when my mother was sick, and I had to struggle to pay the mortgages. And I don't want that to happen to you guys. I want to make sure that you have things in place, God forbid, if you're sick, if anybody in your family, think about all the people that had COVID last year that were in the hospital for months. Their families were struggling because guess what? They didn't have anything to supplement that. And then the tragedy is that there were so many families that weren't even prepared. They didn't have life insurance. And look how many people passed away last year, 584,000 and counting. Do you think out of those 584,000, a lot of those 40% didn't even have life insurance? Okay, so
I just want to
that
jump in. I don't want to cut you too short, but I also want to share a little bit about why this is, happening right now with us and why we are trying to share this information. So are you finished with what you had to say?
yes, this is the Q&A part. This is where anybody who has any questions, you can.
Before we go to Q&A, I just want to say a little bit about myself. Mike Steeler. So David has his experiences where he has lost family and had to struggle through. And one of the things I didn't say earlier is I've experienced, my company Limitless 101 is based on, experience a trauma and how do you get out of that. It's a health and wellness company, but it also has and always has had a financial component because I know for firsthand, when I've gone through different traumas, it has definitely affected my relationship with money and how that has trickled down. I'll give you one example. In 2017, our son was about 7 months old, and I was traveling back and forth to New York for work from Connecticut. We just bought a house in Connecticut. Nice house on an acre of land. We thought we were moving on up from the city, great school district. We did what we were supposed to do, David and I. And, now we got to a point where David was in New York, I was here, and I got into a really bad car accident and it left me with a permanent disability in my spine and my neck. And at the time, I didn't even know what that looked like because I was a new parent in a new place. Even though I grew up in Connecticut, nothing looked the same. I couldn't even find my way around. I had no connections with people because I had been gone for like almost 30 years. And so coming to this place, it was a new place, new town for me that I knew of but never lived in or experienced. Um, and so that was a hardship for me, not only financially, because I couldn't really move, I couldn't walk, I couldn't move around too good. Everything hurt. To this day, I still deal with chronic pain every day. But I've come to a point where now I'm able to take care of myself and my son a lot more easier than I was able to before. Before, it was hard for me to get in a car and drive. And out here, if you can imagine, we're in the suburbs, we have to drive everywhere. Anything you want to get to is at least 10 minutes away. To go get gas, to get groceries, it's a 10-minute car ride. And to be in the car, just to sit in the seat was excruciatingly painful for me. So we are doing this today because David has experienced loss. I haven't experienced loss in that sense. I've experienced what it's like to lose your mobility, to be affected in your mind so that your mind is not really focused on saving and putting money away and doing what you need to do to build generational wealth. And it is so vitally important. So we're here to share this information. We're happy that you were able to get on today. If you were able to get on live or on the replay, definitely reach out to us and ask us questions, pick our brains. You know, we're dedicated to helping others build generational wealth and kind of learn from the mistakes that we made and take the knowledge that we have gained and the knowledge that we're acquiring so that maybe it will empower your legacy and your generation to be better. And that's what it's all about, you know, making sure our communities are building up in a way that we have the tools and we have a way to do it and we see a way, and we also have tangible people that we can touch, see, feel, and talk to one-on-one. So I guess we can open up Q&A, but you can also, if you know you don't have any questions right now, you can definitely reach out to us. David's information is on the screen. I'm keeping the last slide up intentionally. My information is there as well. And in the chat, we will put our Calendly links so that, oh, David's already got it. So in the chat, what we'll do is add our Calendly link so that if you would like to book an appointment with us one-on-one, you'll be able to do that with ease. Just click on the link and then reach out to us and schedule when it's convenient for you. And you can have that time to basically just start a conversation and then build from there.
All right, so anybody has any questions? I would love your feedback. You can unmute yourself. We're all family here.
Hey, I don't have any questions. This is Wendy. I just wanted to say that this was a really good presentation. I'm really excited for what's to come for you with this business.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Saida, I'm sorry I came late. I was waiting for the link, but I received a lot of great information. I'll talk to you later about it.
Got it. Got it. All right. Denise, you can stop recording at this moment.
All righty. Gotcha.
Because I don't want people's, okay, good.
Mhm.
All right, so now we can do a Q&A. Like, you know, I don't want people's stuff being all blasted all over the place.
Exactly.
Let me
get here.
I would love some real feedback, good things, bad things, what could be better. Because, you know, this is going to be the first of many. This is going to be a series, right? So I would like everybody's honest feedback. I respect everybody on this line. So it doesn't matter what you say. It's not going to hurt me. I'm a big boy. There's nothing probably that y'all could do that could hurt me anyway that I haven't been hurt already. So I would love to know some feedback on everything.